There's only one continent in the world that wears jewelry, regalia, t-shirts that say Africa. I don't want to have any more children, right? I have one. I don't want to have any more children. But all the time you say something as a woman, your autonomy has to be attached to your decision making in relation to a man. Because the first question I always get asked is, but what if you find a man? I have zero fears. I can go on heights. I can go in the water. I fear no animal, but I fear poverty, because it's not just about the money. It takes away so much from your humanity.
We stay here and play with kids. Just touch them.
Just touch them?
You know, in Switzerland, you can't touch kids.
Ooh. Okay, let's stop it there.
Africans on Africa. Let's go.
Welcome to Africans on Africa podcast. My name is Ivan Munashekatsere, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel, engage in the conversation, and please contribute in any way that you can in terms of sharing the podcast and talking about the podcast on other channels as well. Today I'm particularly excited, not only because I having a live talk with Thabiso, who's at the back of the cameras there, but today in the studio we have, is it a studio even? It's not a studio.
In the setup.
In the setup we have an award-nominated presenter,
winning,
producer, award-winning.
Okay,
I stand corrected. We have an award-winning presenter, producer,
correct,
survivor star, voiceover, host of the award-winning show,
correct,
which is On the Move on Channel Africa, and the first friend of our show. I want to say first friend of our show because I'm stretching it, Thabiso, because I met Palesa through a friend.
Oh, okay.
Right? So by that lineage, she's naturally a friend of the show.
Yes.
Or a future friend of the show, should we say. Palesa, happy Women's Month, and
thank you.
Welcome to Africans on Africa podcast.
Thank you for inviting me, guys. I think it's a great platform that you guys have put together here, and yeah, when I was invited, I was excited to come.
Thank you so much. We are humbled that you honored the invitation. And I think something that piqued my curiosity specifically with you is specifically that you are in the entertainment industry and getting in there. Probably one of the things that I realized is you got in there by accident and through a kind act of accompanying someone to an interview.
Yeah.
Right? And through that, my question is a bit shallow, but a lot of people, we always hear that the entertainment industry is harsh on women. How have you experienced it, and so far, where has it taken you?
Oh, the entertainment industry is harsh generally, right? It is harsh generally. And how I got in was by chance. How I started, I won't say how I got in, I'd say how I started, how I discovered that I wanted to be on radio. Because yes, I accompanied a friend to an audition for a community radio station, which was a very new community radio station. And I was there, they were like, we're just looking for people. It was so random. It's like, okay, why don't you try out too? I did. But little did I know that it was something that was already in my path, I suppose. Because I had a talent I knew nothing about, and a voice I knew nothing about, but that was how I discovered it. But that's just the discovery, because then it took me years and years and years to actually try and get in the industry and understand the industry and just like make my way through it. So it is a harsh industry altogether. I get a lot of questions from both, men and women, from all kinds of people, on how I made it in the industry, blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, first of all, you need to be resilient, okay? Yeah. For everybody. But yes, it is true, the entertainment industry can be particularly harsh on women because, like most industries, it is still largely male-dominated. And what people see as real talent still largely concentrated on men. Yeah. And you find still so many women being like sidekicks. It's almost like extra entertainment in the entertainment industry, or I'll say in the radio broadcasting space generally, because that's where I've spent that's where my career is. So it's hard to not just be seen, but also to be seen as someone who you can take seriously as a woman in the broadcasting space.
Yeah, I find what you said, it's like you said, it's hard not to be seen, but sometimes it almost seems as if women are located in the entertainment industry just to be seen. in a sense of, for some people, it's a perception of that beauty, and people don't look over that and to saying women actually have things to contribute to that industry. But if it wasn't for that resilience and that kind act of kindness that happened, what would you be doing right now?
I always say I've lived many lives, even though I'm still young-ish, but I've lived many lives. I studied sports management after school, and I did work in the sports fraternity, in the sports world for a bit, but on the more management side. But funny enough, at that time, I was a facilitator. And doing like sports courses across the country, etc. But still, I was using my voice. I just didn't realize that where my impact is within my voice. So even within that sector, I was using my voice. And then I worked for an online English school. And once again, I was using my voice. So basically, in all the careers that I've had and everything in between, I realize in retrospect that it's always been like voice centered, and me speaking to people and me voicing out myself to other people. And that's where it's always been.
So I want to get back to the issue of women being seen. And I think yesterday on the 10th of August, after all the experiences that we had in South Africa, we saw Miss South Africa, Mia Leroux, being crowned in Women's Month, which I thought was actually a good thing. Tabiso, I want to start with you here. As Mia Leroux.
Mia Leroux.
I'll be honest with you, I have a big problem with pageants to begin with. But this one has been particularly interesting because of the lady Chidimma and all the backlash that she received, and eventually her family basically being torn apart, right? I don't know, man. I think me not even being aware of who the winner was, even though I was following all of those news around Chidimma, is symbolic of the bigger problem in the entire discourse around. It's very difficult for me to put a finger on it, but I think it's lying somewhere on the road of this whole thing of being South African enough, and this whole thing of, okay, somebody mentioned this and I found it very interesting. Miss SA is still a private entity, right? So there's also a question of how much should it matter to the rest of us, right? South Africans. And it's sitting somewhere there for me where it's, okay, you've got these women who want to be in Miss SA, which, by the way, is more than just looks and.
Tabiso 4, stop treading on the fence.
I'm trying to find myself, man, because it's very gray for me. It's incredibly gray for me, and I think it's gray because, one, I really do not care about Miss SA, but two, I'm very concerned about that conversation regarding that lady, Chidimma, and eventually the bigger conversation that later happened, where I was driving and found out, oh no, there might have been fraud committed by her mother and identity theft and all of that, right? So I think for me, it's like, if I'm a regular South African, why should I care? That's where it's sitting.
No. Regular South Africans are caring.
No. But you know what? In a sense, I get where Tamiso is coming from, because I think we care too much. You know what I mean? It is a pageant. It's an amazing opportunity. It's a big pageant. It's an international pageant, the beginning of an international pageantry career. And it's opened a lot of doors for so many people, if we're being honest, right? It's a great platform for whatever you want to do as, a young woman in society, and you go and enter the pageant. It opens a lot of doors for you. But I think we did care a little bit too much from the get-go. And that's how I think it just went too far. Chidimma was not going to be representing us at the AU summit. She was going to a pageant and possibly still a Miss Universe that's representing South Africa, but at a pageant. You know what I mean? Not on a political sphere, just in her own capacity, enjoying her life and doing things.
You know my problem with you guys? My problem with you guys is that you are on the fence, right? And your voices matter. Because I don't care about pageants personally, right? And so does Kenny Kunene, I thought. But the thing is, this is what has happened. we have had voices that have stood up that were against this child, voices that pressured the child out of the contest, and voices that have caused so much traumatic experiences for her, and voices that were. I know Mia Leroux is deaf, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And people were celebrating that.
Yeah.
Kudos to that, and not the deafness, but kudos to the fact that people are celebrating that, And I think there was a silencing of a voice of Chidimma, and she's just gone out of the limelight now. And it's because
I don't think she's gone out of the limelight. In
But
fact,
my
I
point
think she
is
received
because-
most of the limelight of this entire pageant.
But my point is, it's because there were a lot of voices like you guys that were silenced and people didn't care. We don't care about the pageant, but the experience of the person that is happening. For me, I think it's enough for people to care about and speak about, because if people don't speak out, then the people who are talking negatively about the whole experience are the only ones who talk.
Okay, so listen here. Don't get me wrong. I think we cared too much. And I'm speaking about the initial, the initiating of the entire conversation.
Yeah.
Of course, we should care now because it's gone too far. And then, the entire Africa and the international community have been part of the conversation. So should we care now? Absolutely. But I think to begin with, we cared too much about just this one young woman entering a pageant. And I think that's where we should have cared less. Otherwise, it wouldn't have catapulted to where we find it now. Right now, we should care because it has opened up so many different conversations, the meanings of Afrophobia, the meanings of what xenophobia really is, also the meaning of like the law and abiding by it, and how sometimes, one wrong act can be to your children's demise or the demise of the next generations. There's so much more conversation that it's opened up that we have to care about now, because those are conversations that will allow us to not make similar mistakes in the future. Yeah. And there's so many holes now that we need to patch up.
You call it being on the fence, but I think it's like gray areas of things that happen in life and our experiences. And before I can say this person is wrong or that person is right, I think a lot of people could do with a little bit of time of being on the fence.
And a little bit of silence also.
You know what frustrates me, right? Is now people act like they knew that her mother fraudulently acquired an ID.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, we knew that she was, but people didn't know this part, and that's now is the point of the matter. That's the one that's actually blowing up the whole Pandora's box. That's the thing that we are focusing on, people acting like they knew. And to get back to the point of being on the fence, you see, there are celebrities now like DJ Spoo, I think, and Pearl Tusi, who have apologized, right? What are they apologizing for? This child didn't do anything wrong. It's like what you say, she's suffering for the mistakes of her parents, which is a different conversation from all the brutality that she faced just because she was born in South Africa.
Hey, brutality. You know what? There's a lot of things that have been thrown out of proportion when it comes to Chidimma, and she's not the first pageant queen in South Africa, in the South African context, that's been brought to the forefront, that's been criticized in some sort of way. In fact, I can imagine for the past couple of years, there's been a lot of criticism for this particular pageant, the Miss SA pageant in particular, and a lot of contestants who've been booted out because of social media outrage, for bullying, for racism in the past. Some who said, no, this person was my bully back in high school or primary school, and then their tweets or whatever came out, and then they came out. So she's not the first person to leave the Miss SA competition.
Wait, so Palesa, are we normalizing the traumas that people go through in
we
Miss
shouldn't
SA?
We shouldn't normalize them, but we live in a social media time, and that means everybody now has an opinion, right? And unfortunately, right now, the opinion of social media matters in all spheres of life, not just in this particular pageant, but now if you look at government and politics and so on, we know that people's voices matter on social media, which is unfortunate because in the greater scheme of of things here on the continent in particular. So people who are on social media, who are active on social media, are the minority of the people in the continent, which means that we're only hearing a select few voices who have a platform that can blow things so big that they can actually have a say on absolutely everything.
And that's why I'm saying, like, the other voices that are silent, people that are silent, I know it's a majority, but this child should be going through the worst worst experience because of that minority who are talking, And
Also, Ivan, she's not a child. She's what, 23? Yeah.
Here's another issue
Okay.
that I had, right? You speak about other people not standing up for her. And if I look at the beginning of this entire thing, for most of it, she remained silent. And I think there was so much space for her to actually say something and have input before things went on too far. All she did was post her videos on social media. You know what I mean? She never actually went and made a statement to the public. She just remained silent as well. Perhaps could be part of the reason that, there's an entity, Miss SA, that is giving her advice and saying, okay, don't say anything about this right now. It could make things worse. Or maybe she got advice. It's fine. But there are also parts that silence can also inflate outrage. And more than us now saying, you guys were silent, but she was silent for most of it too, which I don't know if it would have made a difference or not. I assume it wouldn't have made a difference, but I would have appreciated to see her make a statement rather than just, continuously posting videos, which, by the way, I don't think really helped her out very much. Here's where I stand with this, right? I do feel that the entire case went too far, and she, at the end of the day, has experienced a lot of trauma, and then also coming down to now the criminal aspects of this, which cannot be ignored because, it's important for everybody to care about the law processes of their country. But this wasn't initially about the law process of a country. It was just about identity issues. And we still have so many identity issues on the continent that are part of our history and are part of how a lot of things have been internalized on us. And we're not gonna, it's a huge story if going to the colonialism aspect of it and how our mind shifts took place. But that's where we should be looking at the conversation if we want to fix it, not just Miss SA, which is, just like I said, a pageant, an amazing international pageant, but it is a pageant after all. That's not where the real story is.
Yeah. You know what my position is? Since you mentioned your position and Tabisol mentioned his position, this is my position.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think success is the biggest and the worst misfortune that can befall a migrant, especially a black migrant in South Africa. Because once you're successful as a black migrant in South Africa, people will do anything to make sure that you fall down. And specifically, black people will do everything to make sure that your experience is detached. If she wasn't
Do you feel that way? You are a migrant in South Africa. Do you feel that way?
A lot.
How?
There is a lot of the work that I have done that has been discredited just by the mere fact that I'm a migrant. Or you write this whole paper trying to explain that we should just try to get along. And someone just comes there and dismisses it with go home, or saying things like, you studied in South Africa and you're taking advantage of having studied in South Africa. First of all, that's not my point. But also, second of all, it's that experience of coming to South Africa with nothing and trying to earn something of yourself. If I didn't have, not that I have much, but if I didn't escalate through those academic ranks, I wouldn't have been facing those attacks.
Yeah.
If Chidimma was modeling somewhere in Botasech, I'm sure that's where she.
Is that a real place?
Yeah, I think that's where she went to school, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Yeah. If she was just modeling in Botasech there, it wouldn't have come to this.
Yeah.
But just because she was successful enough to be a contestant, and I think she was
top 10
or part of the finalist of Miss SA, her success was the biggest misfortune for her.
Bless you.
So that's where I take it from. Because once you are successful, instead of people promoting you or people learning from you or any of that, or people actually just supporting you, people look at you like, what can we get from this person? What is she doing wrong? What
Yeah.
is the thing that is wrong about her identity? And identity politics is something that's not new, like especially in the whole world. It's happening currently in the States. It's happening everywhere. But why is it the identity politics only start when she's in the top 10? Because that gets to the next point that I was going to. This idea that we have as Africans of of witchcraft. That if a black person starts to get successful, the people that will draw that black person down is not white people or other people. It's people within their own circle.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to think, and I'm not saying anyone is a witch. Please don't misquote me on this. But I'm saying sometimes it doesn't have to do with uktakata or like being on a broom or anything of that sort. But the concept of the hate that comes with doing evil to a person because they are successful is what I'm getting at within our own African people and black people specifically.
So here's another view of it that I found particularly interesting. So I've got this mate on Facebook, because some of us still love Facebook, and
Unfortunately.
No apology.
and he was saying, like, he was pro Chidimma, and he was making examples of all these other people who represented South Africa but had no South African heritage, right? I think the one was a lady called Tatiana, she an Olympian or something.
Yes.
The other was, what's his name, the rugby player? Beast, Tendai Dwarira, right? And how nobody ever said, like, this guy's not South African, can't represent us, blah, blah. And at the time people were saying, no, but this is Miss SA. Anyway, after all this other stuff came up, right, about the fraud and the potential identity theft, etc., obviously people like this guy on Facebook who sort of step back a little bit, and now they're being attacked and whatnot. And I remember when he was giving all these other historical examples, there were people who kept saying, yeah, you're right? We've been represented in rugby by Zimbabwean, and this lady won, she's half Dutch, half Belgian, whatever, no South Africans, blah, blah, blah. But you're not listening to us. We're saying Nigeria is the problem. We're saying because there's Nigerian blood is why we have a problem.
Oh.
Had she been half Tswana, half Swati, or whatever, fine. But it's Nigeria. Now we have a problem. I found that very interesting because I thought the whole thing was just, we're dealing, like you were saying, we're dealing with identity politics. And, and on the podcast, we're always talking about belonging. Right? And I found it very interesting because it became, and I wish people were talking about this much more, it became a thing of, yeah, we're hearing you, but this is Nigeria. This is different. Because it's the Nigerians.
That's and I think that's the point that I'm trying to make. The identity politics that happen in South Africa, they mimic what is happening in America so much. And I'm about to say something that's controversial, but I think to some extent, South Africans suffer from an American complex, right? It's almost like a God complex that is directed by a lot of ignorance. And I'm not saying this is for everyone, or but there is a way of just saying South Africa is the best continent in Africa, best country in Africa, and there's nothing you can do about it, and you can't access South Africa specifically because black people won't allow you to say that. And the reason why I thought of this, and I shared this with you, Tabiso, yesterday, because Nota said yesterday, in South Africa, unlike Kenya, we can take our protests to the timeline and avoid being killed in the street. In South Africa, unlike Nigeria, they can't silence us with rice. In South Africa, unlike Zimbabwe, we don't have foreign funders of protests. God bless South Africa, The differentiation that comes with South Africa and other countries almost perpetuates this supremacy of South Africa. It's almost like South Africa is supreme, in the same way that reminds me of what happens with America, to say Latin Americans and all the other people in the Americas are not as good as America.
Yeah, but Ivan, that happens in Nigeria as well. That happens in Ghana as well. That's not a uniquely South African thing. You've been in the entertainment industry.
I have, yes.
I imagine you have come across people from West Africa.
from all over. I mean, I work at a African radio station, so I'm constantly having African conversations every day of my life.
In my experience, people in Ghana and people in Nigeria are very similar. I'm not saying all of them, but I think particularly in the entertainment industry,
Yes.
they're very similar to what you're saying, man. Like, we're the ish. Like, nobody does it better than us. And I think it sort of comes with the reality of being in that industry. But I'd also like to think that there's something very cultural about that, something very, maybe patriotic is the wrong word, because that's a very American word.
Yes. You see, here's the thing. I feel like as Africans, we are proud people. Generally, it's how we're supposed to be, right? We're supposed to be proud of our cultures, our identities, and out of everything that we've lost as Africans, our identities, so to say, have been the one thing that we are able to sort of hang on to, which is, part of the reasons is like the divide and conquer, colonialism, etc. But we are very proud people. The problem is that pride has been misdirected a lot to make it a you versus me, rather than just I'm happy to be this person and I'm proud to be this person and this is what I represent and these are my people and this is my ancestry and I'm generally very proud. And Africans are very, compared to the rest of the world, think about it this way. You can go anywhere in the world. There's only one continent that wears necklaces with an African continent on it, with the shape of our continent. There's only one continent in the world that wears jewelry, regalia, T-shirts that say Africa with the flag that makes it. But you don't see another, you don't just see people just generally walking around with a neck piece of the continent of another continent, just or Asia. You don't see that because we, as a collective, we are still very proud to be from here. And even within our collective, in our various groups, we're proud to identify as who we are, but we misdirect it to make it a you versus me than just exuding that pride.
And that's my point. My point is, I can be proud of being Zimbabwean. I can be proud of being African overall, without saying I'm better than Americans.
Yeah.
I can be proud of being a South African without saying it makes me better than other people in other countries.
But you know what the problem is? We are proud to be Africans, but you think that the other continents, America, for example, if you watch on X, we've had a long time running, that hatred on X between Africans and Americans going at each other. And at that time, you'll see even on those platforms that's the one time where Africans actually stand together to fight against the Americans. And that time, it's usually like black people on black people again from different parts of the world coming at each other. So even if you say that you don't see your self-pride as an African as an attack towards others, you can't say that they don't see it that way.
No, but this is a direct attack on other Africans to say, unlike other Africans, I'm better in a sense of doing this, and that.
Yeah, but also, Ivan, that's Nota. I mean,
yeah.
But this discourse is what's happening currently.
I'm just saying, dog, we're drinking juice. You want to bring Oros to the conversation. Here's a question for you, Palesa. I thought that was very interesting what you mentioned, the thing about the continent, symbols and icons of our continent on people wearing it.
Right.
I mean, Kenya, they all have that, what do you call it? That. Ivan has it on right now. Yeah, right. Do you think that's healthy?
Yes. I think self-pride is healthy, but it should be used in the correct way. Yeah. Pride is important. As African people, even when we name ourselves and we say our names and our surnames, the first thing someone is going to ask is that, what does that mean? We're very sentimental people as African people, and we see sentiment in every single thing. Your name and your surname, your names generally, is not a sentiment of who you are, but a sentiment of who you represent, your family, the ones before you, your ancestors, and you feel like you represent them because you want them to be proud of you. Yeah. So it has health in it. There is a healthy aspect of it, and that's why we are who we are. We are very sentimental and we hold a lot of pride in that. But what's not healthy is making it a competition against others.
Because the reason I'm asking that question, and maybe particularly related to the last thing you said, I think of the Black consciousness movement in South Africa was inspired partly by the Black Panther movement of is it 60s in the US. Your Malcolm X's, your Huey. Who's the guy Miriam Makeba married?
Hugh Masekela.
No.
Which one? Oh, yes, the other guy.
Huey Newton. Anyway, the guy named Huey on the Boondocks after.
Yeah.
Stokely Carmichael, and all of those, Angela Davis, Barbara. I think of them and the inception of the Black Panther movement being we're black, we're proud, we want to be militant about it, right? But also we are without asking for any sort of like preface, we are better than you. Right? As white people, we're better than you, right? We're so much better. It makes me think of that because in many ways that goes to that far left extreme.
But you know why in those instances it was important for them to say we are better than you, because you found yourself thrown under the bus, right? You don't have to be better than something if it's not coming at you. And for the most part of history, black people have been, they're people always coming for black people. And so if you have to start from nothing and you're against the odds, you have to find a way to lift yourself. And sometimes it's verbal.
Yeah, I mean, I think of phrases like black is beautiful, and such things. And for me, I'm a little bit torn because it sounds like so much weight and baggage. Sometimes it sounds like some sort of inferiority complex, like we're so weak, we've suffered so much, let's come up with these things. Black is beautiful and such, black consciousness movement. I mean, maybe I'm a little dumb about it, I don't know. But I'm wondering how healthy or how unhealthy that can become. I think of like, after what the Germans went through, you don't see them doing a lot of proud German shit.
Oh, are you sure?
But there's ways that they do that.
Are you sure?
If you look at
them, you got the populism, right, in Germany, which is like far right and all of that. But I'm talking about like maybe the.
Have you looked at the Confederacy in the United States, bro?
Yeah.
Regardless of how bad you talk about it, they still preach the health of their history and what it means to them through statues and all of that. And for us as Africans, I think there's a slippery slope where it goes back to the aspect of us and them, because it always gets us to a point where we also appear inferior to everybody and like we want to fight about everything. And to exemplify that, Tiffany Haddish, she was in Zimbabwe last month.
And then she spoke about the moles.
The way she was shocked about a shop, she was actually in a Pick and Pay in Zim.
Yeah.
The way she was shocked that Zim sells bananas, fruits. They have things. They have a shop.
That's another conversation. It's a big problem with the education levels on that side in terms of just like understanding the rest of the world. That's something that Africa has done really well.
But why it's important is she was not only speaking about Zimbabweans. She was speaking about Africanism as a whole and Africans as a whole.
And that's
her,
what we
it was
don't
like
get.
Africa.
Yeah.
I'm in the motherland, as they say.
That's the thing. You see, here's what we don't get. No matter how much we fight amongst one another, to the rest of the world, we're like a country. We're just one thing. Yeah. And to this day, there are, researchers writing papers on the fact that, there's a big problem in the perception of Africa as just one place, as like a spaza shop on the corner, of people doing one thing there. Yeah. So even when, I was watching the Olympics, Botswana, Tebogo winning the 200-meter final. When he crossed that finish line, the commentator said, the first African. He's from Botswana. He represents Botswana. He was the first person from Botswana to win. But he was the first African person to win in that particular event at the Olympics. You see, they don't even care that he's from Botswana. He's the first African.
Yeah.
And everyone else sees us like that. It's just one area. It is us inside here who are doing all of that. And I just want to come back to your point where you say, why do we keep saying black is beautiful? You see, there wouldn't have been a need to say all those things or to project all those new images if they were not downtrodden before. And so it's important to say that. I think it is important to say black is beautiful. I think it is important to say, hey, black consciousness, because we are trying to make up for hundreds of years of demise. You know what I mean? And not just physical demise, but mental demise. How else are young black girls going to know that they're beautiful if we didn't try and push that messaging? Because you know what? The messaging that's been pushed for hundreds of years before was that they weren't beautiful. So we should have just left it like that and say, it's okay for them to think they're not pretty. It's okay for young girls and young boys to not see themselves as, good enough or beautiful, just so we don't look like we're always trying to push a black is beautiful, or we have to do those things. They are important. There's a reason why there's a documentary on the first black Barbie, the first black person, the first African to win the 200-meter race at the Olympics. It's because we're trying to fight against years and years on years and years of being a downtrodden people.
I wonder if you speak to a Gen Z in that same conversation. Pity we don't have one of them here.
Yeah.
But I wonder if it makes sense to them. So where this is coming from, I talked to my nephew who's 17, 18, I don't know, whatever. But he's around there, right? And the conversation is very different for them, hey?
Yeah.
And maybe because that work has been done.
Right.
Yeah,
because if it wasn't, they don't need to push that for themselves, because they already know they're beautiful. Why? It's because of the years and years of saying.
So on the conversation of it being potentially, is it healthy, is it unhealthy, should it be the same, should it be morphing into something else, should it look slightly different? I suppose that's, I don't want a 15-year-old to have the same baggage that I have grown having as a 32-year-old.
Yeah.
The baggage of blackness.
They still have the baggage of blackness.
I don't want that. I don't want them to feel like everything they do should be representing the community. When they're late to a meeting, to feel like I'm letting down black people. By the way, I recently found out that white people don't think that when you're late to a meeting.
But it goes back to what we were talking about off air as well, like the fact that the colonial journey is not over. So that image that tarnishes blackness, that those stains are still there. That's why for some people, like even myself, it's important to say I am African, because as much as I'm struggling with that identity and perspectives of that identity, and I admittedly do so, but it's important for me to say in my struggle I still identify as African, trying to remove those stains that colonialism has left on us as Africans, because the problem is still there. It is only in Africa where Africans do not realize their oneness. But all over the world, Africans are identified as one.
Yeah.
Although in a negative connotation.
I was about to say, it can be problematic for Africa to be seen as just one, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of that stems from stereotypes and what you're referencing, lack of education, right?
Yeah. That's why I said, although in a negative connotation, but the spin-off of it is that in Africa, we don't see ourselves as one, whereas we should see ourselves with that strength.
Should we though? Should we be seeing ourselves as one?
It's more beneficial than what we are doing currently, because the world will see us as a force rather than divided units and divided people that are just, because the connotations of Africa being a jungle also are reflected in the way that we treat each other.
I'm thinking of sub-Saharan Africa and then North Africa.
Yeah.
When I'm saying should we?
Tell me something to get there.
At some point it has to get there, right?
I think when you put it like that, we are just one people colonized by different entities. That's why there's even a term. That's you can say Southern Africa. That is a identity by location, right? But when we come to the northern, and the term sub-Saharan Africa on its own has its own, it's problematic because it was imposed for a reason.
Well, the borders were also imposed for a reason.
Yes.
How far down do we want to go with this? We are one, right?
That's what I'm saying. Like, there's so many conversations to have here, and they stem from like years and generations of of things that have been happening. And then it's so hard for us to speak about this one thing, Chidimma, which is where we initially started in this conversation. And look how far we've gone. And we can sit here for the next 2 days going down the line of what creates these circumstances in 2024.
One day we must talk about this book by Robert Landau, who talks about how the different clans or tribes were made up because colonists couldn't understand the groups of people that lived in particularly in Southern Africa. One day we'll talk about that. I think it's very interesting because it speaks to what you're saying,
Yes,
how we got here.
It almost seems as if the problem that we are talking about, even in colonial times and currently in South Africa, what the problem really is this aspect of superiority. Because even in Tabiso's example of North Africa and South Africa, it's this aspect of who is superior rather than aspects of oneness. It's aspects of people who identify themselves as superior, be it between the Hutus and the Tutsis, be it between South African tribes, be it between the Ndebeles and Shonas in Zimbabwe, be it in any other tribes that we have within the African continent. And it seems like that's the thing that divides us, because we always want to be superior to the other race or to the other group of Africans. That's why the United States of Africa didn't work. Because we're like, who is going to rule the African continent? But speaking of that, I was thinking of that that Jennifer Hudson example, right? And I was thinking of the impacts of it, specifically when we see how this aspect of poverty porn and poverty tourism has affected South Africa. First of all, let me pause there before I play a video that I want to play. What do you think about poverty tourism? What are your thoughts on poverty tourism?
Oh, I hate it. I hate it because it still comes back to that educational aspect. There's this one place in the world that needs our help and we must help them. And it's been happening. The problem is a media representation of what Africa has been. And although Africa has grown in so many leaps and bounds and strides, and we're seeing so many amazing things happen, some of those media images haven't changed on how we are perceived to the rest of the world, which then creates that if I have some money, I must go to Africa to give them some of it. And we're not saying we don't want the money, but we're saying that, hey, there's so much more to us here. You can just do like normal tourism, in fact, and not make it like poverty tourism, because we have a lot to offer in that aspect, right? You'll be here enjoying yourself so much, but the images that you want to bring out there was like, I was helping poor people in Africa. Even Africans ourselves have grown up with the notion that somewhere in Africa there are children who are starving, so you must finish your food. And that image, the image of the fly on the little child's face,
disgusting,
without the energy to sort it off in the middle of the desert somewhere. It might be far-fetched now, that particular image, but there's still just different variations of that image still circulating around the world.
For me, it's the same tourist group going to Kruger and saying, oh, animals and everything. And then going to Soweto and going to Khayelitsha and saying, oh,
yes. Look, the shacks.
And also the invasiveness of it. People go into someone's house and then they view their poverty. And then imagine if someone from the township says, I want to see the life that you're living in the suburbs.
And I can just walk into your house and say, look, a bathroom.
Have you guys ever heard of a group of photographers known as the Bang Bang Club?
No, tell me more.
So in I think around 1991, when the IFP Inkatha Freedom Party was on this mission basically to ensure that the ANC doesn't win the elections when they do happen. Rumors are they were funded by the National Party and given guns and all of that. Basically, if you were driving around Soweto, whether in a taxi or what, and you spoke Sesotho, Setswana, you'd get killed. Right? That was happening around the country, actually. In the Eastern Cape, that was happening as well. Generations ran a subplot of that with a character called Kaya. People hated it because even during TRC, we never addressed what happened back then. Because that was terrible. That was terrible PR for the transition that was going to happen. It's black people killing black people. It's horrible. Anyway, they made a move about it called the Bang Bang Club, which is based on the 4 photographers who were covering that. All of them were white. But the one guy at some point was in I think Sudan or Somalia. That was just bad. Sudan or Somalia.
Yeah.
And he was covering the story of famine, right? Over there. So kids starving and all of that. And one of the photos he took was a kid on what looked like a desert, right? This with a bloated stomach, and this kid was like on the ground.
It's the famous image and the vulture.
And that's the vulture.
Yeah.
That's that guy, right? That guy made a career out of like protest and war and all of that. But this time he took this image of this child, right? And became that photo that you know. And he won a Pulitzer Prize for that photo. But at the press conference, somebody asked him what no one had asked him the months leading up to the Pulitzer Prize award, right?
What happened?
Where everybody was just, you're great and kissing his ass and all that. And somebody asked him, so after you took the photo, what did you do? What did you do? Did you help the kid? Did you give him some food, or what happened? The guy broke down because he did nothing. He left. The guy actually committed. Can you say this on YouTube? The guy ended himself.
Yeah.
Shortly after that, right? Because now you have to become human.
Yeah.
Because that is no longer just a subject. And it's happening in academia as well. You know this, right? It's happening in academia as well. Poverty porn.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to deal with it. At the same time, I'm also thinking of we've lived in Cape Town. You've seen the tour guides, right? The guys who have small companies that take these people around Langa and Kailicha and build business and make money from that. Yeah. That's the other side of it, right? And if we're gonna have conversations about how AI is gonna take everybody's jobs and blah blah, we should also talk about this. Yeah. And those jobs. I'm completely against it, but then I also wonder, how does this guy justify it? Who's running these tours throughout Kailicha?
But you see how it aligns, with poverty, tourism. How do you tour poverty? And what do you do when you leave that place where you're touring poverty? You see people
share the pictures on Instagram.
and you share the pictures on Instagram. So this goes to the video that I want to play, but also goes to the thing that I want to talk about. The people that we welcome in Africa and the people that we don't welcome in Africa. And the impact that the people that we welcome and we don't welcome make. Right? Where I want to take this. So I'm gonna play this video. I'm gonna start it from the middle. It's a documentary that was done about poverty tourism, and it starts from here. Just for context, they are going to school. They have toured all the other poverty in the township, and now they are going to a school.
Okay.
Right? And they are touring a school, and this is the bullshit that happens.
Mzu grew up in Kailicha Township, and he attended this school when he was a kid. And now it's a regular stop on his tours.
Oya Baba! Oya Baba! Okay, guys, you can sit anywhere you like. I can take a lovely picture with them as well. Let's say cool bananas. Let's say if you really want the show, if you're happy and you know.
You were in the big group of kids?
It was so nice.
Did you like it?
Yes, I like kids.
Is that kind of what you were hoping to be able to do, is come and play with kids?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So now you have a
We
picture?
stay here and play with kids. Just touch them.
Just touch them.
In Switzerland, you can't touch kids.
Ooh. Okay, let's stop it there. Hang on. Whoa.
So just place this in France or in Europe, and just replace that white lady with a black person. Not even a black man. She's kissing the kids. She
says, just touch them. In Europe, you can't touch the kids. So it's okay to come here to touch people's kids.
Can you imagine the visa that this person had? Can you imagine the open gates that this person and the access
to come and touch kids because they couldn't touch the kids anywhere else?
And the pun is intended, like the pun is intended there, because she is literally touching and kissing the kids. Imagine us going to Europe and touching and kissing the kids in school.
Or not just a normal school day, just random people just coming to touch, your kids and to kiss your kids.
I'm really interested in how that Mzu guy justifies.
He justifies it as it's still going to happen, first of all, but also like people are interested in knowing about poverty. They tour this, and he justifies it using the historical context of South Africa to say people want to know the history of South Africa. But to me, I'm like, guys, read a book. Read a book. Do something to educate yourself. Don't come in. I wouldn't want to be one of the parents of the children that are being kissed and touched when you think your children are learning.
I mean,
in school.
if I saw that and one of my children were in the school and I saw a documentary saying, I came to touch your child because I can't generally touch children where I'm from, because those children are respected. But here, I can just do as I feel with the bodies of your children.
Yeah, the human zoo, eh?
And pictures of your child.
I would be in court with somebody, to be honest. I would be in court with somebody, anybody. Just give me somebody to take to court. I am telling
why
you.
do they do this? Like, that's seriously, why do they?
But why are we not talking about this? Why is it's not even something that we talk about? Children are being violated. And we are opening doors to people who are violating children, and a business that violates not only black people but children as well. Because they are touring poverty. You know, and I don't know if this thing always also happened in South Africa. Like, people would tour poverty, so to speak, and then they'll come to Zimbabwe and they'll ask you to. So people would build their houses those days, and as people are building their houses, you know, there's sand outside if someone is building a house, and they'll ask you to sit in there and just throw sand, and you know, like you're playing with sand and you're having a good time with sand.
Like, sir, this is my building material.
Do you understand? So it's the same thing that is happening here, where people take pictures, and the worst of the worst are people who give food and then they say, let's take a picture, you know?
Yeah.
So why are we not talking about these things? Why are we not talking about these type of migrants who are coming to South Africa and doors are open for them and they are welcome and they are promoted to come to South Africa and do this?
Sure. See, that I mean, I had seen enough after that line. I had seen enough.
But to be fair,
I'm sure there's more, but yeah.
it's another one of those things that happen to the global south, right? Where this kind of tourism is happening in South America. It's kind of
guys, we should be tired of the normalizing, guys. We should be tired of it. So it just happens, so we just let it.
No, let me finish what I'm saying. Okay. No, not because it's happening, we just let it. I think it's easy to bring a list of issues, a list of problems that are happening, things that are happening against our people, things that are bad for our people, and going, why aren't we addressing this? I think it's easy to create a list, right? What's a little bit more difficult is to understand exactly that question, why people are sitting back or why people are apathetic. Part of it is because in community, I'm still thinking about that tour guide, right? I'm still thinking about that dude. He's stuck in my head. But part of it is because in my life, there's only so little that I have control over, right? And there's only so little energy that I can expend on things that are affecting the broader community beyond just myself, right? And if you're poor, that looks very narrow.
Yeah.
What you can do looks very narrow. And so maybe if this was a question to the academics, that would be a little bit different. But to the broader public in a country like South Africa, highly unequal, what can that community do?
I don't think so, man. Chidimma was a trigger for everybody, regardless of their class. Children should be a trigger for everybody, regardless of their class. I don't think this is something that's trivial. This should be. I'm talking about things that.
Yeah, but at the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to make sense of that. To myself, I'm trying to understand why what's happening is happening, right? Of course, it's wrong. It's terrible. These are children that random strangers are touching.
Yeah.
Right? I'm thinking of it like that.
Statement on its own.
Yeah, I know, right?
Woo!
I know, right? We also live in a country where children are sexually assaulted almost every day, right?
Every day.
So again, we're talking about those priorities of what can and can't be done by this regular person living in that place.
But also,
and
I'm
the
glad
priorities of what is this is gonna sound terrible, but the priorities of what I can tackle now that has the least harmful impact on me and on everyone.
I'm glad that you brought forward priorities because, poverty tourism is also an issue of the priorities. Tourism is important for the growth of economy. It's the one thing that as an African continent we have a lot of because we live in the most beautiful place in the world, this continent, and it's, people want to come and be amazed, but we also live in some of the most unequal societies that people obviously can take advantage of as, poverty tourism. But what happens is would you, in terms of I suppose on a governmental level, they'll say to themselves, well, what's the more important issue? Is it the fact that there's poverty tourism or the fact that there's tourism? Because tourism brings us money and we want money. And that's why these tour guides and these groups can actually do this, because it is an avenue for money. And money is growth, but it might be an economic. So essentially we're saying we have to choose between economic growth and social growth. And this is, it takes us back socially. It takes our growth back socially. But tourism takes our economy forward.
Those are terrible choices.
Where do you exactly where do you choose?
But don't you think there is a need to keep people in poverty to sustain that market?
And people will always be in poverty. I mean, there's still a lot of, people are not being kept in poverty for the tourism. They're just being kept in poverty.
But I think the justification links to that, because I'm imagining myself in Harlem going to people who are really poor and the rich history of African Americans and saying, I want to tap into that tapestry of the history of poverty in America. Can I get into your place and see your place and see how poor you live?
You probably can.
That is happening
You
now,
probably can.
Right? People who make documentaries do that daily.
But there's a difference with documentaries and I, as a regular person and a regular tourist, knocking in your door and giving you 50 rand and saying, I want to take pictures of how poor you live.
That's what I'm saying. It's it will continue to happen as long as we have to choose between the divide. You see, here you are outraged, but you're not going to change policy. And the policy of a country wants the growth of the country. Number one priority would be economics. And we're seeing these things oh my gosh, this is heartbreaking. But we're not going to ride against the number one priority of a country, which is to be somewhat economically stable and, have an upward trajectory economically. So how is that going to stop? Outrage is simple. We sit here at podcasts, we go on social media, we speak about it. This is terrible. But we can't change policy, and we can't change the fact that we know why it exists, because it makes money and it brings money.
And
I think that's a good answer to your question of why we're not addressing this, why we're not talking about maybe fundamentally why we're apathetic about it, right? We're in August, right? June, July, every year, there are kids dying in mountains in the Eastern Cape.
Yeah.
Every year. And these families spend money to get these kids up there, and then chances are sometimes they spend money on the healthcare afterwards, after botched circumcision and all of that, right?
Yeah.
These are things that are happening on the regular. And now you're trying to tell that community that makes money from a couple of photographers that come every month to take photos of poverty in rural Eastern Cape. Trying to tell them, let's stop the photographers, right? Let's focus on...
I'm not even talking about the family though, and I understand, but I'm not even talking about the family. I'm even asking and directing the question to the tourists. To say, what is it that you're touring?
Yeah.
What is it that you are documenting in terms of what the experience that you want to, that fascinates you?
The fascination is, this makes me feel so much better about me and my life.
Yeah, I also don't get it.
That's the fascination. Humans love to, and that's why, for example, there are people like, inspirational speakers and so forth. People want to feel better about who they are. And unfortunately for these bunch of tourists who go touching our children on random school days, they leave there feeling better about their lives. Oh my gosh, I'm so inspired to live better, to do better. And they don't actually go and do better. They get inspired, they tour, they eat good food, they go home and they continue their life.
That lady looks like she touches children, eh?
She touched the children already.
She got the look, bro. Like she's been caged in Switzerland for too long. Anyway, I used to be part of this thing called, and I wasn't part of it, I participated once.
Yeah.
Pretoria Street Photography.
Yeah.
Right? And
Are
Pretoria,
you not the ones that be taking random pictures of us while we're walking, right?
that's the one.
No, I
Right?
hate that so much.
And Pretoria Street
I
Photography.
hate it.
I used to, I was in varsity, I think.
Tabiso's opinions are not opinions of the public.
I think I was in varsity, and you know me, man. I'm always on these different research projects, and even then, I was doing a study of artists, right? And the sort of spaces that they get into and what they do. And that time, I followed these photographers, and this guy, he's from Pretoria, I think Attridgeville, and he built this thing called Pretoria Street Photography, and he'd get photographers, maybe tourists visiting who happen to be photographers.
Yeah.
They join in on these walks, right, and walk around Pretoria. So I went on I think 2 of those walks, and so there'd be like a group of these foreign nationals, right? People from Netherlands, maybe even like Malawi, all over the place, and they all have their cameras out, walking about, right, and stopping everywhere, just right, or I got partner somebody with a camera in your face,
Yeah.
all right, and then in the back there'll be like 4 or 5 of us there. Yo, this is kind of fucked up, right? And we always amp each other that no, we're better, we're right, we're better, whatever. But I remember learning from the whole experience that this guy who was running this thing, he had never actually tried to understand what he was doing or why he was doing it.
Yeah.
It was some sort of creative process for him. He never even thought about how the people, the subjects,
Yes.
were experiencing this, right? So, and a lot of it, if not all of it, was on townships. I remember one lady saying, "Nah, let's go to Waterkloof and take those people, the rich people, take them photos randomly." Right? You can't even do that, bro. They're not even in the street. Right? And I thought about that, and this reminded me of that right now, because I'm wondering how that guy would have dealt with a lady like that. Chances are you would have let it slide, actually, because again, that dude Mzulu, man. There's something going on with his head to
I think
justify
the worst part about poverty is that it takes away others' perceptions of your autonomy. And so it opens a space where people can do as they please with you because they feel you are uneducated. You don't speak up. And unfortunately, the majority of people in poverty-stricken places are uneducated and they just don't know they can say no. So they allow it to happen. And that's what I hate the most about poverty. I always say I'm not scared of lions and tigers with pez. I'm scared the most of poverty, please. You know what I mean? I have zero fears. I can go on heights. I can go in the water. I fear no animal. But I fear poverty because it's not just about the money. It takes away so much from your humanity.
And I think you're correct there, but I also think poverty depreciates the perceptions of your experience without even your contribution.
Yeah.
Like the same way that Tiffany Haddish can come with her perceptions and say, this is what I think of Africa. What I'm seeing here is not really important, but this is what I think, and I'm going to tell you what I was thinking. You know, it's not even a light bulb moment for her to say. For her, the stereotype and the prejudice persists because she's like, no, this is actually not correct what I'm seeing. The correct thing is that these people are poor.
Yeah, they shouldn't have a mole. Come on.
You know, so that's also just in addition to the point that you're making. But it also makes me think about some of the conversations that we are not ready to have. And some of the things that I was thinking about is the fact that the critical problem that we have with drugs, for example, is that the addicted and the afflicted with drugs are the ones who are condemned. The suppliers are known, but they are ignored. The problem that we have with wars is that the perpetrators of wars are known, but they are ignored. It's only the innocent who are killed with wars. And the problem that we have with corruption, specifically in Africa, is that the corrupt are known and they are ignored, but it is the ones who are scammed that are policed and they are arrested and they are brought to justice, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so the problem persists, you know. It's like we're focusing on people who are using drugs, but it doesn't solve the drug problem.
No.
But I think a lot of it boils down to power and the distribution of power.
Yeah.
Like you were saying, like poverty sucks.
Yeah.
Like, dignity is stripped away from you.
Yeah.
But you're also very powerless. Right? In a similar fashion, if you're a drug addict, you become very powerless very quickly. And it's easy for the state to treat you as a criminal than as someone who's ill. Right? In what's the country? Colombia. The president who had hunted down, what's his name? Pablo Escobar. His name was Gaviria. That president who was in that term, right, of the presidency when they were hunting down, when they had the narco war. He later said, about 20 years later, that we messed up. We went about it completely wrong. We treated it as crime, when what we should have done is treat it as a public health crisis. Right? And in other words, when you go for the dealers, you're going for criminal business entities. Right? You don't go for the addicts, who are people with health issues, who are victims. So I think a lot of it definitely boils down to power. Al Jazeera made it wonderful. I told you about it. I hope you've watched it. The docu-series about the gold mafia.
No, I watched it. Gold mafia.
Again,
I can't talk about it, but I know it.
Hang on. Where is that guy who was speaking about we are so silent? But here he is saying there are things he can't talk about. We'll let it be.
Ivan is gold.
We'll let it be. Ivan, you can't talk about something when...
For your sake, my mother, I'm not going to... I think I've just spoken about it. I think it's... Yeah, we're not going to go there.
So I think at the same time...
Now you've answered your own question on why other people are silent. Because maybe they feel they can't talk about some things.
I can't even speak about why I can't speak about it.
It's fine.
Why are you doing this?
It's fine.
So I think it's also like women who are abused. It's also like children who are abused. It's similar. It's power dynamics, man.
On that note of power, I think we want to do something different that we're starting. I didn't tell you about it, Tabiso, but we want to do something different. We've never done it, but I told Palesa about it. So 2 things that we're going to do is that we're going to talk about unpopular opinions, right? You're going to give an unpopular opinion. Palesa is going to start. I'm going to go second, and then you go.
Bro,
unpopular opinion.
I'm on a sub already. Unpopular opinion.
Oh, there you go. This is for you then.
So you're ready, right? And then after that, we're going to go to parting shots. I know it's going to open floors to conversations.
Yeah.
But Palesa, start with your unpopular opinion.
Okay. My unpopular opinion is that as much, and I'm glad it's a Women's Month unpopular opinion, is that as much as the world feels that we are now having conversations about women, the continent is still not ready to accept a woman's autonomy. And I say this because they say they are in the broader person. Yes, women power, you know what I mean? But have a conversation. And these, I'm speaking about instances where I have conversations with people and I say, I don't want to have any more children, right? I have one. I don't want to have any more children. You would feel, oh, okay, that's your opinion. You should have the autonomy to say that. But all the time you say something as a woman, your autonomy has to be attached to your decision making in relation to a man. Because the first question I always get asked to a decision I've made and I'm stern and I'm firm and confident in is, but what if you find a man? What if you find a man that wants to marry you? What about, no, this is the decision is not about finding a man. It's a decision about me and my reproductive autonomy, but it has to be attached to somebody else. And there's so many examples I can make that I live on in everyday life. But like now, you know, with the movement of decentering men, that's women pretty much saying we're not being against men, but we'd like to put ourselves in the center of our lives, as men do. Men put themselves in the center of their lives. But then men have to come in and take away. People have to come in. And women too. Women are part of those who perpetuate, you know, less autonomy to other women, because women will be asking you the same questions, not understanding that my stance and my autonomy has nothing to do with your decision of your life, but it can also assist for you to see how your autonomy can work for you. You know, that's my unpopular opinion.
Unpopular.
I have many unpopular opinions, but we'll keep it moving.
Okay, we'll keep it there for now. Do you want to say something to us before we get into ours?
Yeah, we had a conversation, Evan and I, a while back on an episode about LGBT rights in Africa.
Yeah.
And one of the things Ivan was saying, remind me, man, was about how women.
Okay, hold time. So, let me go first.
Okay.
Because you've threaded into two of my unpopular opinions. You were about to say that's why.
Okay.
So two of my unpopular opinions is the other one is stolen from Buchi Emecheta, which says women are their own enemies when it comes to their own emancipation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And the second one is the GBV conversation is not only about men abusing women.
Yes.
I get in trouble for this, right? So the first one, I think there's a conversation that needs to be had about how women are actively prolonging and also perpetuating patriarchy.
Yeah.
Women are actively defending patriarchy. In some cases, that men don't even have to do anything about patriarchy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the sexual conversation that we're talking about, Tabiso, where we're saying women are taught what to do sexually and what not to do sexually to please a man. And women have circles that protect those conversations. But men are not even included in those conversations.
Yeah.
But also how to treat a man. Why is that statement even there without a statement of how do we treat women?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
But also it's
all of those conversations I hate so much because, like, you know, you teach women how to please a man, but you don't even teach women how to receive pleasure or how to understand them or how to please themselves,
you know.
And that's where,
taboo.
in fact, that is where amazing sex starts, is when you understand how to please yourself and how you like things to be done.
And I think from a man's
body.
perspective as well, like, who would want the struggle of figuring someone out? You know, it's important, but like, it's like, if I'm gonna figure you out, help me figure you out as well, you know. And women are not taught; they're just taught to focus on the men, you know.
Yes.
And sometimes that by exchange is also important, but also it adds into the whole conversation of the role of women in bashing
other women,
especially with the Chichi conversation. How women were bashing her. And that's why I was saying standing up is also important, because I never saw women actually saying we are standing up with this woman and we are saying leave her, desist from touching her. We have seen people getting citizenship just from saving a baby, or not, it's huge. Saving a baby or doing something and they get citizenship. I never saw advocacy from women saying this woman was born in South Africa, she was raised in South Africa, she doesn't know anything. Even at this point, she must be able to be eligible for citizenship as a child.
Okay, but I'm also so tired of Chidimma. But I get your talk.
I'm just
because
saying.
Generally you are right, and make other examples, because oh gosh.
Okay, no,
I am so drained.
Wrong example.
I am so drained with Chidimma. I'm so drained.
Okay.
those women.
But still, you stand up for a principle. You don't stand up with a person. It's like now DJ Spoo and Pearl Tusi have apologized. What are they apologizing for? Their principle for me was not shaken. Because this girl didn't do anything wrong.
Oh, guys.
But we are done with this girl. But
I'm talking about.
Let me go on.
I'm so tired. You know, here it is, right?
Yeah,
all form of isms, racism, sexism, etc., are systems that have been entrenched over time. And more than they mess with the physical, they mess with the mind the most. And it is true that women are also, part of their demise when it comes to their emancipation. But many people don't know any better because of the mind part of it, right? Yeah. But in that same aspect, it's important then to instill education as much as possible. And that's why education is not just about learning your ABCs, because you learn about things that can bring you forward in the world. You see, the story of emancipating women can't start with the conversations that people are having. The economic power that men still hold in this day and age continues to increase that particular cycle. Because whether we like it or right now, they say, women power, this and that. But in the broader spectrum of things, in the statistics of things, it's still just such a small dent to what can happen. So yes, absolutely. But whenever we can share the message, which is something that I try my best to remind women, like, hey man, you've got to wake up to some of these things. Not so long ago, I actually made a video on my TikTok speaking about single women and how much as a single woman, people will always try and take advantage of you because they don't see your worth beyond a man, right? So even in the workplace, if you work on some side of like let's say an extra time system, they'll always call the single women first because they assume because your life is not attached to a man, you're not doing things for a man, you're free, you're good. You know what I mean? Also, if you don't have children as a woman, you'll be the first to come up. In families when they need something, whether Mang has more money or whatever, but they'll always approach the single woman first because they assume you don't need to do much with your money and your time because your worth has been attached to a man. And those same people who call you who do that are women themselves because that's how a system works. It rotates, and that same messaging is entrenched over and over again. And and what I was saying in the video is like you actually have to say no to your family, to your workplaces, to your friends who always see you as the scapegoat of society simply because your worth is not attached to a man.
But Palesa, are we ready to talk about the conversation of the social power and the social capital that women in Africa have in relationships, in marriages, and in the whole system?
I'm ready. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Because I think the social power and the social capital is really important because, in a sense, not being a proponent of patriarchy or anything, but do we see how the people in roles like mothers, aunties, and social aunties and social sisters drive patriarchy, and they massage patriarchy in such a way that it maintains, but in the same way that you were saying, you know. So I think the power conversation is also to be had from both sides, where we are talking about, yes, the economic power has been had and still is maintained in the hands of men, but also there has been a pervasion of that by women who raise their children, their nieces and nephews, their social nieces and nephews, to say you have to.
Yeah, that's under the guise of tradition. Another conversation altogether, right? Under the guise of tradition, but how do those traditions come forth? It is patriarchal systems, men who make the rules in traditional setups that just keep rotating, say, because it's tradition, it has to remain that way. You know, many a times, yes, women have a lot of social capital because we're the speakers, we're the people who speak up. And in fact, women are the protectors of society. I don't know where we got this thing of men being the protectors, because for most part, men are the perpetrators of society and women are the protectors of society. Women are social capital. They speak to one another. They call it gossip, but actually it's a sharing of information and understanding in community, right? It's a sharing of conversation and understanding in community and bringing information in and out to understand how to protect society or protect these societies. But then in the same breath, that social capital is used to perpetuate patriarchy because of this tradition, the traditional guys. And that's why it says it's tradition. When you're on your marriage day, women must sit with you and say, this is how you must treat your husband. If he comes back at 2 a.m., you must say nothing. You must give him bums. You must, you know what I mean? But it's so broad, whether you like it or not.
Are you coming back to the show?
I don't know. Are you guys going to invite me again?
There are a lot of topics that are piling up now, and she's agitating me.
Let's talk about matriarchy in Africa. Africa is very unique in that regard.
And there are societies that have. We were talking about a documentary on matriarchy, so
you guys want to hear my unpopular opinion?
Yes.
No, wait. I'm not. But you've spoken about the other. But we've spoken about the other one, which is GBV is not only a conversation for men violating women, and I know there is a lot of women who also have to take responsibility in terms of making sure that they don't violate men, but also there are men who have to stand up and also be part of that act of empowering themselves, which is pretty much a controversial thing to say in Women's Month, but this is an unpopular opinion. This is mine.
I don't know if it's controversial. I think my biggest issue with GPV is dudes who, we know who's hitting his wife, and then we don't call each other out. That's probably my biggest jibe with it amongst men. You know, you had a bride, we all know, hey, it's Pee-wee, you know, and then nobody calls them out. That's pretty fucked up, if you ask me. Is it my turn?
Yes.
Finally.
Okay. Infertility is not widespread enough, is what I think.
Yeah.
I I think a lot of people who are having children should not be having children.
Why?
And just because the poor planning
Okay.
happens. Okay.
Okay.
The poor planning happens.
Yeah.
I get that. We're human beings. We
Yeah.
do things, right? But I also think that a lot of us, when I say people, I'm including myself.
Yeah.
A lot of us are either not ready to be parents or just don't understand parenthood. And I think the state is in a poor position to do anything about that. So maybe biology should take over.
It is
I
an
think
unpopular opinion.
People shouldn't have kids because people are having kids for the wrong reasons. Finish. It's really people have kids, right? And they have it for societal. They have kids for societal pressures, especially when they are having the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. You know, it's one thing to say I have one child or two children, and I want to fend for these children, and these are my joy and your selfish reasons. Of course, I want to be a parent and all of that, and you take care of them.
All reasons for parenting are selfish.
Yeah.
I feel. Even when people are planned to have a child, all reasons
But
to
I
have
find
children
those
are
better
selfish.
than the social reasons,
Which are
one
day they're gonna help me and whatever.
they have to find someone to play with.
Oh yes.
My
Oh.
parents want a grandchild.
Oh, my
But also
gosh.
that whole legacy thing. is
That
such
whole
BS,
legacy
such
thing,
BS,
that's
man.
bullshit.
Yeah.
Legacy.
So I do think I think it's one thing that we'll never all agree on. And so I do think
I think men should talk about
Biology should-
vasectomy.
yeah, I know you're pro vasectomy.
Please,
I am
guys,
too.
please
I am
Men should talk about
vasectomize.
vasectomy.
Yeah, I think so.
vasectomies
I think
are the
so.
way, especially because most of the time they're reversible and all that. Having said that, I still think it's not enough. I think infertility is not
It's the
widespread
only.
enough.
But-
It's the only
but okay, in that white-
contraception that's 99%.
What I want to ask you there is
Yeah.
who do you think should be infertile and who shouldn't be? Should the human race stop populating altogether, or are there some people worthy of fertility and some others not?
So here's the thing. We're already on a fertility decline.
Yes.
Like globally. And the quality of sperm for the last 3 decades or so has been declining
Swimming
as well.
slowly.
Yeah.
Swimming slowly.
Yeah, it's bad quality sperm. But also women are just having fewer kids. So the experts say by the year 2100, the population will begin to decline. So it's kind of happening already.
Yeah.
But that's without infertility being a big deal.
Yeah.
Right? That's all economic and social reasons
Yeah.
for the most part. Who should be infertile? See, that's the beauty.
I
of-
want you to choose because it's your your
Yeah,
unpopular
so
opinion.
this is the-
So choose who must get it and who mustn't.
So this is why this opinion is best for me.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to choose. It's biology. And it's gonna be like, if you believe in God, it's God who chooses. If you believe in the universe, it's the
Biology.
But
hasn't been
Tabiso, I
helping.
want you to choose. I want you to choose. Infertility should be more widespread. I want you to choose
You want me to
who
say
should
who
be
should and
fertile
shouldn't
and
have
who
children?
shouldn't be infertile.
Dude, I could create a whole criteria. But no.
What is
It's
the
expensive.
That's what I want. What is the
Tabiso, fool.
criteria?
You are on the fence.
What is
again.
your
Tabiso,
criteria? Give me your
fool.
criteria.
All right, fine. I'll give you one of the kinds of people that shouldn't have children.
Okay.
Right? Someone like myself.
Yeah.
I'm
Do you
not-
have children?
No.
Okay.
I'm not planning to get married. Nor am I planning to build a household and
Yeah.
and such, right? Someone like
But what
me-
was marriage? What does when now you're going into the deep end because what does marriage have to do with it? So all people
You're
who
going-
not planning to get married can't have kids.
No. I'm saying people like me. Let me finish the description of me. right?
Okay.
Yeah, people like me who doesn't even think of in 30 years' time I'm gonna have a one life partner for my life.
Yeah.
A person who doesn't envision himself even building a family.
Yeah.
Right? If you're like that, and also economically or financially, I can fend for myself and just for myself right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
To the extent that makes me happy.
Yeah.
Right? I think if you're in my situation, for example, you shouldn't be having kids. That's one of the people. There are other people that I think shouldn't be having kids.
No, but that's not one people. You've mentioned quite a number of criteria. So those are a number of people already who can't have kids. For you, people who are not planning families or who aren't planning to have
I'm
their...
talking about this entire combination.
No, you can't have... But that combination is a combination of so many different things, points that you can,
Dude, if you
can
meet
put
all
together.
of these things I've listed, you have to meet all of them.
Oh, okay,
Then
you have to meet
shouldn't
all of them.
Yeah, you have
Okay.
to meet all of them, then you shouldn't have kids. The other people I think shouldn't have kids.
I think shouldn't is too much of a big word, you know?
No, Pala, we're talking about
Guys,
infertility. It's a shouldn't.
I'm talking about
It's a
infertility.
shouldn't.
No, you know why I say this
He says these people must be cut off from
You asked
reproducing.
him a specific question, and he made it personal. So if you say shouldn't, choose a group of people, not yourself.
No, you know what?
I'm
He
getting-
doesn't want to choose the group, but there's so many groups of people he's already mentioned here. But
I gave an
it's fine.
example
Yeah.
of like
Okay, we want your
people
next
like
people.
myself
Yes.
shouldn't have children.
The next
I
people.
also think people who work for the government shouldn't have children either. Like if you are in government, you've got no business having kids.
Yo,
sounds a
employees of government should not have children.
No, I think if you particularly in leadership,
Oh, wow.
like if you're
You are
an
getting straight.
Not government employees, those poor people.
if you're an MP, if you're in parliament, if you're in the presidency,
Why?
if you're leading the treasury, yeah, I think you should be very selfish and self-centered to be in those positions and do a good job. Is what I think, right?
Okay.
Yeah. And
So those people must be infertile, all of them.
Those people.
Infertile. Done. Done.
Yeah, we're in that box.
Okay.
Right.
Imagine the application form for government if Tabiso has his way. How many kids do you have or do you want to have?
Inventors should not have children. People who invent new shit from scratch should not have children. I think it's bad for the kids, too much baggage,
Elon Musk.
potential inheritance tax and all that crap. I think it's just
But in
sad
a
for
sense,
the
aren't
kids.
we all inventors? I mean, in the creative world, you are inventing every day. You invent something. Inventions aren't just
No,
physical,
that
right?
sounds wonderful. And I
Yeah.
also believe that, and I'd like to write it down somewhere. But I mean, like, clearly life-changing inventions, like the freaking wheel. You know?
Okay.
How are you gonna determine that this podcast is gonna change lives?
How are you gonna determine who's gonna become an inventor?
No, a life-changing invention.
Oh, I mean, look, OpenAI with Sam, what's his name? Sam Bankman-Fried. Not Sam Bank. That was the crypto guy, the criminal. Forgot his name. The OpenAI.
So which invention is not gonna change lives?
It's not gonna change lives. I mean, everything changes lives. The glass changes lives, right? But if it's the first class, dog, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
You know, you shouldn't have children, right?
Okay.
But also remember, it's up to biology. Biology will determine.
We'll
whether
sort it
your
out for you.
invention
So
will-
let's not worry about it.
I'm just, guys, it's a
Okay,
simple
yes.
thing. Infertility is not widespread enough.
I hear you. We have heard all the examples of the people
So
who
let's-
shouldn't have it. So to the government employees out there, don't even think about it. According to Tabiso, you're not worthy.
Not government employees.
To those who
Also,
don't want
that's a big
families.
problem. There's no such thing as worthy to have children, hey? Because once we do that, we're gonna start talking about a class of people.
But you've
Yeah,
made them
shouldn't.
unworthy.
Yeah, shouldn't. Doesn't mean they're not worthy. Everybody, it's simple to have kids, dude. Right? But
Is it?
not everybody should.
Okay, so let's take
If
it this
things are going to plan, it won't be easy. Right? If infertility does its job, it won't be easy.
until the test comes positive.
So they should. Nah, that's the Chinese.
So let's do it this way, right? Okay, so this one is not gonna end. This one is obviously gonna carry over until your list exhausts, Tabiso. But let's do it this way.
Right, she's trying to get me in trouble with this list.
I am a little bit, but it's okay.
But you are already, bro. Like, look at the camera.
I am a little bit. I wanted you to expand and see how
If you're
deep
a
you want to
member
go
of
with that
parliament,
one.
You're digging,
You got no
bruh.
business having a kid.
It's
If you're the
okay,
president,
Tabiso, it's
you got
okay.
no business having a
I'm
kid.
sparing you. I'm
But you know
sparing
how
you
many
now.
people you are listing already who have children, even
I
those that
am.
they don't know.
I am most fascinated by the first example because it gives me so much meat to take you down. But I won't today.
Yeah, but
Next
it's an
time.
unpopular opinion we share.
It is. It is.
I'm
And
gonna
we like
pause
that.
it at that. She said next time, so she's coming back to
Oh.
the show. I'm gonna hold it. I'm gonna hold it to that. She said
Bro,
next
too
time.
many people are having kids too easily.
Okay, Tabi. So we're
Yeah.
just gonna have that.
I agree with you, though. I agree with you.
Okay, and so now to close it off, we're gonna have parting shots.
Okay.
Parting shot from Tabiso.
And what is that? Remind me.
Like with whatever we have said.
Yeah.
How do you conclude this, and what is your parting shots? What's your drop mic thing and everything that we've said today?
Okay. Well, you guys go first so I can understand.
I think a lot of the conversations that we have become quite big. I think I'm saying as Black people, become quite big because we're dealing with so much everywhere, like in the diaspora, you know. As a result, I'll say what I keep saying, man. People need to be able to learn empathy a bit more, like putting yourself in another person's shoes.
Yeah.
I hate the virtue signaling that we are all doing all the time. Yeah, and sometimes it doesn't even look like it, but it fundamentally is. And that's coming from whatever opinion people you might have. At the end of the day, sometimes it's just nice for the other person to be wrong. And I don't think that's productive at all. And so listening, put yourself in another person's shoes. I go back to that dude, what's his name? Muzi.
Yeah.
I would really love to put myself in his shoes. What are the things that are going on in his mind that help him justify getting this Swiss child toucher in Khayelitsha and taking her around, you know? Because clearly he justifies it somehow.
Yeah.
And so I would like to learn that. And I think a lot of more of us should be doing things like that. Yeah, that's my parting shot.
Yeah, that was deep. I don't even know what to say and follow up after that. But I think there is much more work to be done in terms of integrating our identities as Africans, but also understanding ourselves as Africans. We have shown in the last month that the identity politics not only determine who belongs and who doesn't belong, but they also reflect how much poverty porn has also impoverished our minds in terms of we are so far from a space where we not only understand ourselves but also have room to accommodate others. But ultimately, I think my parting shot would be where people do not rise for another person, let's rise with the principle. I think the principle should still remain, even if there are confines of the law that even not goes against that, but we don't understand. The principle still remains, and the situation that we're talking about, that we are tired of talking about, is one situation that shows that law is not easy, but principle in some cases has to be priority. And for me, principle still remains.
All right, I'm going to say something about that first. I don't want us to make it a debate, but in my opinion, there is no such thing as the principle or a principle, because we all live under various different principles. And what you might see as the principle is not what others could see as the same. So we must also always keep in mind that, you know, when we come for people for either saying something or not saying something, is that we don't share the same principles. And you can't make your principle the overruling principle over others in their lives.
Put yourself
When
in their shoes, right?
Yeah.
When you say come for people, you mean coming for me. You came for me.
No, have I come for you? I apologize. I think for me, in the years that I've worked as a person who talks for a living, I've seen the power of silence sometimes. And in silence, sometimes it gives you an opportunity to observe. And that's how you get to know more about people, about things, about life, is that even though overall you get paid to talk, but it's in the silence that you will actually have something to say. And I think many of us should actually start practicing that and not try and jump onto everything simply because you've been put in a space or a position where people will listen if you talk. But sometimes you should just shut the fuck up and listen and observe, and then only if you have something to say something. So for someone, I particularly have never felt any pressure to be pushed by society or anybody for that fact to speak up on a matter that makes sense at a time, simply because I'm in my observational phase, and only when I have something to say I will say it, because I act in so many ways in my society. You don't impact people by just spreading nonsense on mass platforms, on mass information platforms. You make a difference by taking whatever information you've gathered and changing your direct surroundings. And that's what I try to do more than just spewing on public platforms.
I like that. I was saying, sitting on the fence, can be necessary for
Nah.
Because if you say
Is
to
it
me,
Gandhi who
Palesa,
say-
you didn't
is it
speak
Gandhi
up.
or Mandela who
You didn't
says
speak up for.
silence anywhere where there's violence is a threat to justice everywhere.
No, listen,
Guys,
There's context
listen.
to that.
There's a
There's
different.
a very
Listen,
good
listen.
context.
What
That fits.
what I'm saying here is that there's a different kind of speaking and a different kind of silence. If you say to me, Palesa, on social media, you didn't tweet a single thing about.
Palesa, you can't say that when you are
Listen,
here.
let me finish.
You have a mic.
Let me
and you
finish.
ask-
Let me finish. I have a mic every day of my life. This is my
Yes.
life. I have a mic every day.
Yes.
But someone will say, you didn't speak up for another one, but you claim to be of the voices of women. But if you come into my life and my surroundings, you see there, because I can see the platform. I'm observing. I see what's going on over there. And no matter what I say won't have any real impact. It's just going to be like, you have to say something because everybody is saying something. But come into my life and see the impact that I make. Come into my spaces, come into my mic spaces and hear the kind of impact that I intentionally make. Because if I said something on social media while this whole thing, this impact would have never been intentional. It would have just been throwing a rock into a deep hole of nothingness. Yes, it is important to speak up. It's how a lot of regimes have been changed and grown. All I'm saying is that intention is important to be attached to voice, because if you're just speaking for the sake of it and there's no intention behind it, you're making no real impact. You're just stirring. You're just another stirrer. Sometimes you must just shut the fuck up. And it's okay.
I ultimately think that Palesa stirs me. And
I'm glad.
and
that's what I like to do. I enjoy doing that the most.
And I think the value that you add to this podcast is I can't even put it to an amount. And I enjoyed this show and I enjoyed the conversation with you. Although we have a lot of things that we said will carry on for another show or for another podcast or for another conversation. And I'd like everybody to comment down below if you think Palesa should come back to the show. I personally think she should come back to the podcast and she should be a regular friend of the show. And shout out to Kagiso for getting Palesa here and getting us acquainted. And I think that it is important for us to have these conversations. Although we ended at a point where we can't even agree, or some points we agree.
Yeah.
But I think opening
But
up
that's
the floor
also
for
okay.
conversation
It's important in life for people not to agree.
Yeah.
Because then that's how different opinions form.
Yes. And on that note, thank you so much everybody for watching. Thank you Tabiso for the contributions. Palesa, I am grateful for you for having you on the show, and
thank you so much, guys. Thank you for inviting me
on the show again. This is Africans on Africa podcast, and I am Ivan. I am still an African, regardless of what all this conflict says. Cheers, guys.
Africans on Africa. Let's go.